There comes a moment in every life when the grip finally loosens. Not because you've decided to let go, but because holding on has become more exhausting than the fear of falling. This is not surrender in the way we typically understand it, not defeat, not giving up, not collapse. This is something far more profound, far more mysterious. This is the final stage of healing, the place where transformation stops being something you do and becomes something that happens through you, like breath, like the turning of seasons, like the inevitable blooming of a flower that has spent months buried in darkness. We spend so much of our lives clenching our minds around outcomes we desire, clenching our hearts around people we're terrified to lose, clenching our very souls around identities we've constructed from the fragments of other people's expectations. We grip the steering wheel of existence with white knuckles, convinced that if we relax for even a moment, everything will spin wildly out of control. But what if I told you that the chaos you fear is already here? What if I told you that control itself is the grandest illusion you've ever believed? When you truly let go, you're not abandoning yourself to randomness. You're acknowledging something that has always been true, but that your fear kept hidden, that life has been living you all along. Your heart has been beating without your permission. Your cells have been dividing and dying and renewing without consulting your preferences. The intelligence that transformed a single fertilized cell into the intricate miracle of your body did not need your input. And yet, somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that your thoughts, your worries, your endless mental negotiations were what held everything together. Before we go deeper into this mystery together, I want to invite you to join this community of seekers, of those brave enough to question the stories we've been told about who we are and what life means. Subscribe to this channel if these words resonate with something true inside you. Leave a like if you feel the tremor of recognition. And please share in the comments your own experiences with letting go. Because healing, real healing, happens in communion, not in isolation. We're all walking each other home. The paradox of letting go is that it requires tremendous courage to do absolutely nothing. Our entire culture is built on the mythology of control, of intervention, of making things happen through sheer force of will. We're taught that problems require solutions, that pain requires fixing, that emptiness requires filling. And so we approach our inner wounds like engineers approaching a broken machine, something to be analyzed, understood, repaired, optimized. But you are not a machine. You are an ecosystem, a weather system, a cosmos of competing forces and complementary opposites. And the wisdom that heals you doesn't come from books or techniques or strategies. It comes from a place far older than thought itself. Consider the nature of a wound. When you cut your skin, what happens? Do you have to consciously direct your white blood cells to the site of injury? Do you have to remind your platelets to form a clot? Do you have to instruct your tissue to regenerate? Of course not. Healing is built into the very fabric of your being. Your body knows what to do. It has always known. And yet, when it comes to emotional wounds, psychological traumas, spiritual fractures, we somehow believe that we must figure it all out, must understand every cause and trace every effect, must actively manage the process of becoming whole again. What if the deepest healing comes not from doing more, but from interfering less? What if your depression, your anxiety, your sense of fragmentation are not problems to be solved, but experiences to be witnessed, honored, allowed to move through you like weather through an open valley? This doesn't mean you don't seek help when you need it. It doesn't mean you don't take medicine if medicine serves you. It means you stop adding the suffering of resistance to the pain of experience.
There's a story about a man who finds a butterfly struggling to emerge from its cocoon. The opening is small, and the butterfly seems to be stuck, making no progress for hours. Moved by compassion, the man takes a pair of scissors and carefully cuts open the cocoon, allowing the butterfly to slide out easily. But something is wrong. The butterfly's body is swollen, its wings shriveled and useless. It never flies. What the man didn't understand is that the struggle to emerge from the cocoon forces fluid from the butterfly's body into its wings, strengthening them for flight. His interference, his attempt to save the butterfly from difficulty, actually crippled it. We do this to ourselves constantly. We try to bypass the struggle, to shortcut the process, to emerge from our cocoons without the very struggle that would give us wings. We medicate away every uncomfortable feeling, distract ourselves from every moment of boredom, scroll through our phones to avoid the silence where transformation whispers its secrets. And then we wonder why we feel so weak, so unable to truly soar. Letting go is not passive. It's not the resignation of someone who has given up on life. It's the active recognition that life is not your enemy, that difficulty is not a mistake, that your pain has something to teach you that your pleasure never could. It's the understanding that you are not separate from the process of existence. You are the process experiencing itself, learning itself, healing itself through the particularity of your individual story. When you truly let go, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and you start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" You stop demanding that reality conform to your preferences, and you start getting curious about what reality actually is when you're not filtering it through the distorting lens of your expectations. You stop clutching at the people and circumstances and identities that you think define you, and you discover that without all that grasping, you are still here, in fact, more present, more alive than you've ever been.
The second stage of this journey into genuine release involves something uncomfortable, something most of us spend our entire lives avoiding: the willingness to feel everything. Not to analyze it, not to justify it, not to immediately try to change it, but simply to feel it fully, to let it move through the landscape of your awareness like a storm moving through open sky. We've been taught that certain emotions are acceptable and others are dangerous, that some feelings should be cultivated and others should be suppressed or transcended. But this is like trying to have an ocean with waves but without depth, trying to have a fire that produces light but not heat. Your anger is not your enemy. Your sadness is not a sign of weakness. Your fear is not evidence of failure. These are the very energies that, when allowed to flow rather than dammed up behind walls of judgment and control, become the raw material of transformation. Think about it. Every spiritual tradition speaks of fire as purifying, of darkness before dawn, of death before resurrection. These aren't poetic metaphors meant to comfort you. They're descriptions of actual processes, maps of territories you must travel through if you want to arrive at genuine freedom. But here's what makes this so difficult. Our culture has taught us to be terrified of our own inner weather. We've been sold the idea that happiness is the goal, that peace means the absence of turbulence, that healing looks like finally getting to a place where nothing ever hurts again. This is a profound misunderstanding of what it means to be human. You are not meant to transcend your humanity. You're meant to fully inhabit it, to feel it all, to let the full spectrum of experience play across the instrument of your awareness. When you truly let go, you discover that what you are most afraid of, the raw, unfiltered experience of your own inner life, is actually not dangerous at all. Feelings don't destroy you when you allow them. They destroy you when you resist them, when you force them underground, when you spend all your energy trying to maintain the fiction that you're fine when you're actually falling apart. The feelings you suppress don't disappear. They fossilize, they calcify, they turn into the chronic tension in your shoulders, the knot in your stomach, the armor around your heart. There's tremendous intelligence in your emotions, even the ones you hate. Your anxiety is trying to protect you. Your anger is trying to defend your boundaries. Your sadness is trying to honor what you've lost. These aren't malfunctions, they're messages. But we've lost the ability to listen because we're so busy trying to make the messages stop. We take the pill, we have the drink, we lose ourselves in work or relationships or endless entertainment, anything to avoid sitting still with the truth of what we actually feel. Letting go means letting in. It means creating enough space inside yourself for the fullness of your experience without immediately trying to manage it or fix it or make it mean something about your worth as a person. It means understanding that you can feel devastated and still be whole, that you can feel lost and still be on your path, that you can feel broken and still be healing. These aren't contradictions, they're the natural paradoxes of a consciousness vast enough to contain multitudes. I've noticed something in my own life and in the lives of countless others. The things we resist most fiercely are often the very things that, once we stop fighting them, reveal themselves as gateways to freedom. The people who finally stop fighting their grief discover that on the other side of those tears is not endless sorrow, but a softness, a tenderness, an opening of the heart that makes life more vivid, more precious, more real. The people who finally stop fighting their anxiety discover that underneath the fear is a tremendous aliveness, an attentiveness, an engagement with existence that had been channeled into worry, but that could just as easily be channeled into creativity, into presence, into love. This is the great secret. The energy is neutral. It's your relationship to it that determines whether it becomes suffering or transformation. When you grip it, judge it, try to push it away, it becomes toxic. When you allow it, breathe with it, give it space to move, it becomes liberating. It's the same energy, it's just that one approach creates resistance and the other creates flow. Letting go, then, is really about letting be. It's about developing what some traditions call equanimity, what others call acceptance, what still others call surrender, not as a passive resignation, but as an active hospitality toward whatever arises in the field of your experience. You become like the sky, which allows all weather to pass through it without being diminished or damaged by any of it. The sky doesn't push away the storms or cling to the sunshine. It simply remains open, spacious, present to whatever comes. This doesn't mean you don't have preferences. Of course you prefer joy to sorrow, peace to turmoil, ease to difficulty. But preferences are different from demands. Preferences are like hoping for sunshine on your picnic. Demands are like insisting that the universe restructure reality to match your expectations. One is sane, the other is the root of all suffering. When you let go of the demand that life be different than it is, something miraculous happens. You discover that you can handle what is. You discover reserves of strength and resilience you never knew you had. You discover that you are not as fragile as you thought. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop demanding that your circumstances change, your circumstances often do change. Not because you've mastered some law of attraction or because the universe is rewarding you for your surrender, but because you've stopped pouring all your energy into resistance, and that energy becomes available for creative response. When you're no longer paralyzed by the insistence that things should be different, you can see clearly what needs to be done. When you're no longer exhausted by the fight against reality, you have the vitality to actually engage with reality skillfully.
The final stage of healing, the place where letting go becomes complete, is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all. It's the recognition that there was never anything to hold on to in the first place. Everything you thought was solid, your identity, your story, your understanding of who you are and what your life means, has always been in flux,
always been provisional, always been more like a river than a rock. You've been gripping smoke, clutching at reflections, trying to freeze a moment of the dance into a permanent statue. Who you were 10 years ago, can you find that person? Where did they go? The cells of your body have largely replaced themselves. The thoughts that consumed you then might seem trivial now. The relationships that felt eternal have transformed or ended. The dreams that drove you forward have either been realized or revealed as illusions. And yet, through all this change, something remains. Not a thing exactly, but an awareness, a presence, a capacity to witness the river of experience flowing through the landscape of consciousness. This is what you actually are, not the contents of awareness, but awareness itself. Not the thoughts, but the space in which thoughts arise. Not the emotions, but the capacity to feel emotions. Not the story, but the consciousness that experiences the story. When you identify with the contents, with your achievements, your failures, your roles, your relationships, your physical form, you're setting yourself up for endless suffering, because all contents are impermanent. They arise and pass away. They change and dissolve. You cannot hold them, no matter how tightly you grip. But when you shift your sense of identity from the contents to the container, from the waves to the ocean, from the forms to the formless awareness that perceives all forms, something shifts. You realize that you've been trying to protect and preserve something that was never at risk. Your essential nature, the consciousness that you truly are, cannot be damaged or destroyed. It has no birthday and no death day. It existed before your story began and will continue after your story ends. You are not in the universe is in you, appearing as this particular expression of awareness that calls itself by your name. This sounds abstract, perhaps even mystical, but it has profound practical implications for how you live. When you know yourself as awareness rather than as the forms appearing in awareness, you can hold your life more lightly. You can take things seriously without taking them personally. You can engage fully without clinging desperately. You can love deeply without the crushing need to possess or control. You can grieve losses without being destroyed by them because you understand that nothing was ever truly separate from you in the first place. Everything that has ever happened to you, every person you've ever loved, every experience you've ever had, it was all you experiencing yourself, in the way that the ocean experiences itself through waves. The wave thinks it's separate, thinks it has an individual existence apart from the ocean, and so it fears dissolving back into the depths. But it was never separate. It was always ocean, just temporarily taking the form of a wave. When it dissolves, nothing is lost. It simply returns to what it always was. This is the ultimate letting go, the release of the illusion of separateness, not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived reality, a felt sense, a direct recognition. When you stop defending the boundaries of your separate self because you realize there are no actual boundaries, when you stop protecting your story because you are not your story, when you stop clinging to life because you realize you are life itself, this is freedom. This is the peace that surpasses understanding. This is healing at its deepest level. And paradoxically, this doesn't make you detached or indifferent. It makes you more engaged, more compassionate, more alive. When you're not constantly defending a separate self, you can actually see other people. When you're not imprisoned in your own story, you can respond to the needs of the moment with creativity and spontaneity. When you're not burdened by the fear of losing yourself, you can give yourself away freely, knowing that what you truly are can never be diminished. The final stage of healing is the recognition that you were never broken. You were only convinced that you were broken by a culture that profits from your sense of inadequacy, by systems that require your self-doubt to maintain their power, by a fundamental misunderstanding about what you are. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived, an ongoing expression of the creative principle that animates all existence. When you truly let go, you don't become nothing. You become everything. You stop being this small, defended, anxious self, and you become what you've always been, the open awareness in which all selves arise and pass away. You stop seeking completion because you realize you were never incomplete. You stop seeking peace because you are peace. You are the still center around which all storms revolve. This is not the end of growth or challenge or difficulty. Life will continue to bring you difficulties, losses, uncertainties, but you'll meet them differently. Not as threats to a fragile self that needs protecting, but as new forms of the dance, new ways for consciousness to experience itself, new opportunities for this mysterious intelligence to express through the unique configuration that is your life. So let go. Let go of the grip, the control, the demand that life be other than it is. Let go of the story of who you think you should be and allow yourself to discover who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and fear and learned behaviors. Let go of the future you're trying to manufacture and the past you're trying to preserve and sink into the only moment that has ever existed, this one, right here, right now, where everything is exactly as it needs to be for your next moment of awakening. The healing you seek is not somewhere in the future, contingent on finally getting your life together, or resolving all your problems, or becoming the person you imagine you should be. The healing is here, now, in the letting go itself, in the release, in the recognition that you are already whole, already home, already everything you've been seeking. Welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to the truth. Welcome back to the freedom that was your birthright all along.